the standard is the foundation. That's the base, right? And unfortunately, I think Jerry can attest to this. There's people that work below the base. There's people that work below what anybody should be operating at.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Searching for the standard in EP. Today, John Moss and myself are delighted to bring to you, hot off the heels of a recent event, Gerard Boniello and James Cameron, Chair and Vice Chair of BEPP, and many other hats. John, this was an exciting event. We had representation from the UK, from the States, of course, but raising the standard or even searching for it. Why does it elude us?
This is a great conversation to be a part of, and I'll tell you why. Because we've got no skin in the game. I mean, that's probably not strictly true because, it's all one industry, and we have to care about what's going on within our industry, no matter what the location, the geography, and so on. But, we've spent so much time over the last couple of decades talking about and fighting and arguing over the standards that we should be setting here in the UK in the lead up to, the SIA, which you could say now is really quite well established, as to whether it's well governed and implemented is a different question. And that is kind of what I was alluding to at the start of all of this. And it's good to be able to sit back and see how somebody else is handling that with, of course, the foresight of being able to see how things were rolled out in the UK with the SIA. So this is going to be really interesting.
Absolutely. And people still talk about that transition period in the UK, the less governed approach, the more governed approach. I'm not sure that there's complete synergy with what's going on in the States, but the question of, who's asking for a standard, what is in a standard, how far can you deviate from a standard? I think these are all really, really relevant questions. And of course, we did have James on February 2022 to sort of dispel myths, look at his work, look at the work of the BEPP. I can see now several UK stakeholders who are prominent in the world of standards that we all know and love. They are engaging with this initiative too. So it is a bit more global. But I guess, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, isn't it? Who's asking for what? Does the end customer know what they're asking for? And
more to the point, Palom, who's deciding? Who's deciding? And this is the thing that will divide many people, especially with this particular type of model where it's a kind of self-governance or self-appointed governance. Here in the UK with the SIA, it came in through more official channels, and therefore everyone in the industry can either rally behind it or against it or for it. Whereas I guess another aspect of what James and his board are trying to do is to win over and to sell this idea to maybe a large proportion of the industry that aren't convinced that this is the way to go.
Absolutely. And I think they would be the first to admit that this is supposed to be the industry's standard. So then again, there is that dynamic. Does one suggest it to them? Does one collate it from them? And where is the bar? How many are operating underneath the bar? And then does the end customer care? What about the people who are maybe very, very experienced? Anyway, this is a great debate, and great to frame it in the very, very current hot off the heels conference that they just ran in Kansas City. So there'll be a lot of eyes on this topic, a lot of eyes on their work, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from them. Let's look at the search for an EP standard in the United States.
And now, let's meet one of the contributors to the Circuit magazine.
Outcomes from the Executive Security Operations Conference. I'm here with James Cameron, Chair, and Gerard Boniello, Vice Chair of BEPP. Great pleasure to have you on. Very, very timely session. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you for having us.
Great to get on. Great to capture this moment in time. It's a week since the inaugural conference. Well done. Lots of great feedback online and in person. We're talking the output and outcome of this conference. And in a way, this helps distill lessons learned. This helps tee up next year's conference. But actually, for the Circuit Magazine podcast, this is a great way to get a sense of what was happening, what people learned from the organizers themselves. So, James and Gerard, I'll ask my three quickfire questions, which I usually do to frame the debate. What was the problem you were trying to solve with this conference?
So I think the problem that we were looking at was people not getting a lot of content when they walk away from a conference. We wanted to solve that. We wanted it to be great speakers, great topics that people would pay attention to. And the networking is great, but we wanted a good combination of good networking and great content with speakers.
Okay, fantastic. And I suppose this ties into the mission of BEPP, and we have covered this, quite a lot on a previous session with yourself, James. But where does your passion come from for this endeavor?
My passion is just giving back to the community that's been great to me. I enjoy executive protection. I've been doing it for 15 plus years, and at some point you reach that point where you have experience to start giving back. And over the years of experience of, what my disappointments in the industry are and how do we fix that? How do we correct those disappointments?
And for you, Gerard?
Well, it's similar. I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. It's done through hard work. It's done through being given opportunities by other folks who saw something in me. And the industry has been very good to me. So I want to give back to the industry and give others that I see promise and an opportunity to succeed. And we just need to help the industry all around, and that's basically where the passion comes from, to see this succeed.
Fantastic. And then I suppose my third quickfire question: the uninitiated protector. Not every protector is uninitiated, I grant you, but what should those who didn't attend better understand about the goals and the outcomes and the focus of the event?
I think what the uninitiated, the ones that didn't make it, and we get that it's an inaugural conference, and not everybody's gonna take a wait and see kind of stance. But what they missed was some excellent speakers, very high level, not just in government, but in the private sector as well. Very high level presenters on timely topics. The amount of content that we delivered as well. One of my proudest moments is that everybody walked away with every single presentation in print. That just doesn't happen. And we wanted to make sure that that was part of our delivery to our attendees, that they were able to walk away with that knowledge and that reference.
Somebody who attends a lot of conferences, we took what were the positives that we've seen in other conferences, the benefits. How do we accentuate those and enhance those? And what are the things that we see that other conferences lack? And let's fill that void. And that's exactly what we did. And we, like James said, every attendee received the presentation book, which was, James, how many pages were in there?
180 pages.
180 page presentation book of every presentation that was given, as well as all of the sponsor information. It was pretty significant, and I think that was a huge surprise to the attendees.
Fantastic, and everyone loves that that sort of added value, and the EP community, great readers, great learners. So I can fully appreciate why that's gone down very well. So let's get into perhaps some of the topics and the themes. Was this primarily a US conference, or were you open to international themes as well?
We're definitely open to international themes, and as a matter of fact, we had, including the U.S., we had 6 countries represented at our conference. So we had we had visitors from the U.K., we had Australia, we had Mexico, we had a lot of Canadians that were there. So it seems it's all relevant to CP or EP, depending on what you call it.
And I saw our good friend Jackie Davis was there. That's fantastic, sort of showing from across the pond, which is really good. But where does this tie in with what we previously spoke about, James, on our previous podcast about the ANSII standard? Was this a vehicle to help develop that standard, announce it, spread awareness? Where does that tie in?
I think it was a great opportunity to answer questions about the ANSII standard and really dive into how an organization like ours, what we had to do to get that accreditation, and then what the overall process is to write that standard, and making sure that it was understood, like we've discussed on the podcast previously. It's not the BEPP that is writing the standard, it is the industry professionals that are writing it. And there's an actual process in which we follow to ensure that everybody has a voice that wants to be heard. And we give that opportunity. So we did answer a lot of questions. We had a full presentation on the ANSII process and our progress update. But also we wanted to make sure that we touched on topics that could be in the standard. And more elaborate a little bit more. Like we had Dr. Michelle Keening, the special advisor or the senior advisor to the U.S. Secret Service on protective intelligence. Obviously, that's a topic that's going to be in the standard, but she is at the highest level that was able to articulate protective intelligence.
Like it, and what stood out for you, Gerard? Because I'm trying to give our audience a flavor of the kind of topics, the keynotes, the themes, because at other events, we cover operations and TSCM and standards. Yes, is also in there, but this is an operations conference, at least in the name. What stood out for you, Gerard?
The high level of speakers was really front and center. We had the deputy director of the State Department Diplomatic Security Service. We had, like James said, Dr. Michelle Keeney from the Secret Service. We had Mary Beth Jenke, another Dr. Mary Beth Jenke, and Joe Arturo. I mean, we can go down the line of these speakers, but they were all senior level. So we weren't talking about things like what goes in a go bag or these kinds of elementary type of topics in the industry. So the audience was filled with senior members of the industry, and that's, like I said, I attend a lot of conferences, and that was really that was something that stood out in terms of the quality of the speakers and the attendees.
And if I could add one thing on the range that we had. So we had government, obviously, that was speaking, but we also had Scott Lowther, who runs a very large protection or family office for an individual. And he was able to give a presentation on what does he look for in vendors. When he hires vendors, what is he looking for? And how does he make his decision on hiring security vendors, which is great for business owners to know. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we also had a gentleman, Jason Bertrand, who is a true solo practitioner, and he was talking about all the things that he has to do as a solo practitioner without a large apparatus or a large team to support him. So it really was, from the largest, private team organization all the way down to the solo, and then kind of everything in between, to include, like Gerard said, Dr. Mary Beth Jenke, who focused on the mental health of the practitioner. So how often do you go to a conference where the practitioners actually talked about, and how do we take care of ourselves? Because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we obviously can't deliver a safe service to our clients.
Absolutely, and it was very nice. Dr. Mary Beth Yankee came to the Bodyguards for Kids initiative, which we were also supporting. So I'm very familiar with her work. So great to see that aspect covered. So to place this, I suppose, in the canon of events, would you say that maybe out there's enough other content for people who are not yet proper executive protection specialists, and it sort of promises that content sort of speaks to how to get in the industry, whereas perhaps your conference was a lot more for the senior leadership, the seasoned professional, and sort of business operations questions. Is that a good way to frame it?
Yeah and no. That's how we came into this. We wanted a senior level conference, which we did. We were successful, and I would say after the conference was announced, maybe 2 months before the conference, we announced that let's do an after conference where we focused on the newly initiated into executive protection, where we discussed everything from how to explain return on investment to potential clients, to resume tips, hiring practices, or interview practices, networking. So we really covered the entire gamut. And the after conference wasn't for everybody, and it was more of a relaxed panel. It was a very loose discussion. So I think we were able to cover both segments. What do you think, Jerry?
I think that format that we chose to do relatively last minute was outstanding, and the reason because you had the executives that came in for this conference and they were very pleased, but then they decided to leave, and some of the like James said, newly initiated, or some of the folks that have only been in the industry for a short period of time, but then there were some seasoned practitioners in there as well that wanted to hear what we had to say. So they stayed around while others, we weren't, I don't want to use the word boring others, but they elected to leave because the conference was over, and this was specifically targeted to a select group. And so I don't recall how many were there. I would say 50 maybe, Jim? I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably about 50.
Yeah, 50 folks stayed, and we had, like James said, it was rapid fire. It was very quick. We gave each topic, anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, and just moved along. And we did it from 1 to 5. I'm sorry, 1 to 5. And I think it was fantastic. I think it was great. I think a lot of people got a lot of the messages that I got after on LinkedIn and Facebook and through email were not only about the conference overall, but specifically about that particular piece, that they took a lot away from that.
And I can imagine how useful that must be, because sometimes I've seen newer practitioners say, well, this is great, but I'm not a multi-million-dollar enterprise. And then conversely, I've seen multi-million-dollar enterprises at other events and other, forums saying, well, this is good, but as James said, it is about the right bag to carry, which might not be right for a CEO of such a thing. Might be, might not be. So dividing it up, I think that's very sensitive to the different needs of the organization. How does this tie in with your goal to professionalize the industry? Does it seek to create a pathway? I'm wondering how that feeds into the work of the ANSII standard in that way.
The ANSII standard is that's moving along. As a matter of fact, the awareness that we brought, I have a lot of emails that I got to get to still of people volunteering saying, this is great, I want to be part of this. So it really drove a lot more traffic of more volunteers to help work on the ANSII standard. And I think we look at this conference, the standard, this is the holistic way of looking at EP. You know, you can't just have a standard. Then there's a follow on where we have speakers talking about relevant and current topics or issues that they are facing. And then, you know, there's going to be other things that other initiatives that we're coming up with in the future, but it's all packaged together. You know, it really is about setting a new standard for how EP or CP is done. And that includes our events, our conferences that we go to. There are a lot of conferences out there, everywhere from ATAP to GSX, but they're not specific to what we're doing. Well, we're trying to make that specific to what we're doing at a senior level, because senior levels do have issues that they need to resolve. They also need to network with vendors because obviously they can't provide all the solutions in-house. So that's the platform that we're trying to give.
And BEPP is not the same as the ANSII standard, which I think is very important to sort of highlight, isn't it?
Right. I mean, we are a nonprofit organization that is really looking to improve the industry on a larger scale than just the standard. I mean, that is great, and that's going to make massive changes. But there's other areas that we hope to impact.
So on that, let's talk about it. The work of the BEPP. What are you looking to achieve, going forward? We're looking at this conference as a great vehicle. There's going to be fantastic outputs, outcomes. You've already got that fantastic document. But for those who've yet to sort of see the board and the breadth of the BEPP, what are you working on? What are you working towards as a group?
Well, first, I think we're kind of catch our breath after this conference. While I think it was fantastic, we still have after actions to do, which we are doing this weekend. There's bumps in the road, of course, that we've identified, and we got to iron those out. Now we got to start talking possibility for next year. While the standard is being worked on, as a matter of fact, at the end of this month, the technical committee and the working group have documents that are due to us. So we're still doing that in the background as well. So yeah, it's and on top of that, we still have the board certification that we're working on as well to help elevate. And we got tremendous feedback about that at the conference from these senior level stakeholders that are out there saying, "Oh, that's fantastic. We're very interested in that." So we do have a lot on our plate. We're juggling a lot. We're spinning a lot of. We're juggling a lot of balls at the same time. But it's all for the benefit of the industry.
Yeah, this is not an agenda. We have no agenda. This is not for us. And what James said in the opening of the conference is, this is not our conference. It's not about us. This is your conference. We're doing this for you. And everything that we do is for the greater good of the industry and those involved in the industry. There are folks that see this as some sort of a ploy or an agenda or an avenue to something, that's going to enrich us. That's unfortunately, when you see that, you look at that because that might be your motivation, but it's not our motivation. Our motivation is to just create and do something that is going to enhance the industry. And this conference was put together in 6 months, and we did it backwards, as we've probably been doing everything. And rather than come up with a budget and base the conference on the budget, we came up with the conference going, high scale, trying to do everything as best we could, picked a great venue, had a great menu, amazing speaker, all of this. We picked all of this out, and then we figured out how much it cost. And that's when the work started, trying to come up with the money. And hoping that we would cover it. And it wasn't basically, I think, until the last maybe 2 weeks that we were able to say, okay, this was never about making money, but it certainly wasn't about bleeding us dry either. But we, as you well know, I mean, how many conferences have you put on? This is your thing, this is your wheelhouse. So you know exactly what we're talking about. And about this last week to the conference, we realized, okay, we're going to break even on this thing, and there was a lot of sleepless nights before that. So, but that's the way we did it, and because we did it that way, we're not smart enough to do it the other way. We figured it out that we wanted to do the best we could, and it was, and it all paid off. And going back to Jackie Davis and also Mary Beth Janke, both of the doctors had said to us, both of the ladies had said to us at different times, you know how I know that this was a great conference? Because I was able to sit through the entire conference. That tells you it was a good conference, because they said when they go to others, they sit through just a couple of the speakers. There's some conferences that they sit through one, but they said that they sat through all of the speakers in this particular conference. And that was huge, coming from Jackie Davis and Dr. Mary Beth Janke.
Mm. Yeah, that's certainly a very important format. And you alluded, yes, this is my day job, right? so I for those listening, there's a very knowing smile that I imagine came across my face when you said build it and there will come, field of dreams, type approach to it. But yet that's what happens. But then this isn't your day job either, which is very important to note, because you all have day jobs, and this is something that you do on the side voluntarily. So sometimes you alluded to people that might say, well, what's the message, what's the intent? Certainly it being not your day job is certainly a reassuring factor in some respects, James, isn't it?
Well, we all have day jobs, and every Saturday, I don't know, for the last 3-4 months, we meet up every Saturday, discuss what needs to take place, and we're constantly talking on group chats or an email, passing ideas back and forth, whether, like, branding, what do the banners look like, and then approving, and getting those things. What about the menu? What hors d'oeuvres do we serve? So sorting out all those things on our free time that we don't have, that we're not putting towards our work. Again, it was quite challenging, and like Jerry had alluded to, we went into this not of the mindset of how do we make money, but we went into it, how do we provide the best value for our attendees and provide the biggest return for our sponsors, and whether that was through our social media marketing of the conference and always making sure that they were mentioned, things like that. But that's how we approach this, and I'll tell you, we still haven't got the final hotel bill, so I'm still a little worried. Yeah, what that's going to look like. But it really came out proper, and to our own detriment at sometimes. As far as we always want to be transparent, we want to dispel any rumors that there is about anything. So at the end of this conference, when we have the final totals, we're going to be posting everything online. How much did things cost? How much was the food and beverage? How much was audio visual? Because I think people don't really understand. You do, obviously. People don't understand that it costs $21,000 for audio visual, for a day and a half. So we just really want to dispel the fact that we're really here for the community and for the industry.
Yeah, especially if the hotel is captured by one of the audiovisual firms. But no, that's
yeah.
You've heard of corkage. Well, there's corkage with audiovisual anyway. But going back to sort of reassuring people about the mission and things, I've just brought up on my screen some of the questions that I asked you back all the way back in I think February 2022. And we looked at the standard, we looked at the BEPP mission, and one of them, I sort of said, well, we're talking about raising the standard or at least creating a bar. And I asked, well, are there any operators in work operating currently below your proposed standard? I'd be interested in your thoughts as to if that's the case, or has it changed, or have we seen progress towards your standard over the last year?
Well, I think people need to, the standard is the foundation. That's the base, right? And unfortunately, I think Jerry can attest to this. There's people that work below the base. There's people that work below what anybody should be operating at. Whether they're operating without a license, without insurance, that's not the standard, right? The standard is if you're going to operate, you need to have those things. So yeah, unfortunately, there's still going to be people, and there's always going to be people. When we come out with a standard, there's always going to be those that don't operate within it. I think right now, because nothing's actually been released as far as the standard documentation, we're still in the same spot, but there's a lot more awareness of what we're working towards, and some of the things that we've been able to dispel, which I think I don't know if we did it a year ago, because again, we're learning as we're going. But the standard is really to focus on the must do's, not the should do's. And when you explain that and say, okay, the standard is going to be based on or something that a solo practitioner can do or a team of 15 can do. It has to be at that level, or else it's not going to be a standard, because you got solo practitioners out there that always go below standard. So explaining that, and that we are taking that into consideration. So I think that's one of the things that changed since the last time we spoke. But even this conference, we wanted to set a standard for the conference, and I think we've done that as well. I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing people print out presentations and giving them to their attendees. I've never seen that before. We all discussed all the conferences we've gone to. We've never seen it. You always get promised digital copies that may or may not come to fruition. But we gave physical. Here it is. It's on your table when you come and sit down. So that's, again, everything we're trying to do is always going to try to push the envelope and raise that bar, even if it's just ever so slightly.
Absolutely. If there are folks that work below the standard on a daily basis. I mean, that is, mediocrity is the new normal. And so there are folks that are doing that every day. And if there weren't, then we probably wouldn't be pushing the need for the standard so fervently. And we are not in a position that you can be a barber and you have to go through 600 hours of barber college most of the time to get that, and certainly standard there. And they're cutting hair, and not that taking anything away from that, but it's that if we make a mistake in what we do, it's certainly more significant than maybe cutting hair a little too short, a little too long. So it's something that was needed. We've seen, I think, a positive change where people are now embracing it more. They're less fearful of it, because a great many folks thought that this was going to knock them out of the industry for whatever reason. And now that they've become more acquainted with it, more familiar with it, they're embracing it, and they like it because it's going to differentiate those that do quality work above the standard versus those that don't.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. I think a lot of people have been more reassured, or at least more educated about your mission. And one of the questions or concerns a year ago was, what about seasoned professionals? Is the work of the BEPP targeted at new entrants who are coming through the ranks, having to do qualifications? How could we grandmother people who are very, tenured? And I think that's become a bit of a non-question now, hasn't it, James?
Yeah, I think it has, especially when we get a gathering of stakeholders that we had at our conference. It's my belief that the standard will come from top down. The new practitioners won't care about a standard; they just want to get into the industry. However, the people that they're hoping to work for or aspire to work for, if they say you must meet these standards, that's how it's going to actually be enveloped into the industry, right? So if you've got a Fortune 50 company that is demanding during their hiring process that the people they are hiring meet standards, that's how it's going to trickle down. It's not going to trickle up, if that makes sense. So we're definitely getting that feedback. Organizations, detail leaders, family office leaders, they're looking at what we're doing, and they're really liking it because it helps them provide a better service to their client.
No, I like that. And I guess maybe developing that again. And this is, I honestly just think this is a great opportunity, because you're here, I'm here, Gerard's here. Right? And I didn't plan for this to be like a 1 year on from our interview session, but one of the questions people did have was, this is all well and good, improving things, creating standards, but is the end customer going to ask for it, much as they might ask for, an ISO standard in construction. I don't know. Are we seeing more of that, more appetite from the customer to request such a standard?
Well, again, with the decision makers that we had in the C-suite, those that are being protected, I don't know if they'll particularly ask for it, because I don't think they particularly know exactly what we do, which is fine, because we don't know what they do, right? We're not going to try to tell them how to run an organization. If they have protection, they assume that they're getting the best return for their investment. So it's those that are running those teams, those chief security officers that are running those teams. Those are the ones that we're hoping to influence. And it really does seem like we are, because it also allows them to justify a higher budget to their boss and say, if you want us to do X, Y, Z, according to the standard, it requires this amount of support, which then turns into X number of dollars, right? So they can start justifying their budgets based on the standard, taking it to their boss. And it's up to the boss, of course, to decide whether or not they want to have that expenditure. But, I always tell people, for example, if you want to do a rope line where the client's going to go down and shake hands with people, well, the standard may say it requires 3 security agents to do that. If you're a solo practitioner, you take that to your boss, say, if you want to do this, I can only I can't guarantee your protection, but I can only ensure a better protection for you if we have 3 people. And here's why. Here's the standard. Here's how it's written. The boss still may say no, but at least you've informed them, right, on how it's supposed to be done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it integrates with a lot of other work, like in a high net worth home. Sometimes we had Chris Alderson, and he said, well, someone might say, I want a 2,000 pound heavy door, and it's like, well, okay. If you do, then the building standards require that you reinforce the floor, and I can see how that would fit together.
Yeah,
I like that. So, reflecting on your sort of outcome, what do you think we're going to really need to see next year? Will it be more questions around tech, more questions around AI, or more on the human factor? What's your priority going to be there? And also, I'd be interested, how does that tie into some of the new working groups you're organizing?
I think we need to take a look at, we're going to have some surveys that are going out to our attendees. And I think like we did this year, we really had a broad spectrum of speakers or topics rather, right? So we had a broad spectrum of topics, everything from a doctor talking about medical directors overseeing medical professionals on EP teams, to vendor selection, to mental health. We had a good spread. I think that's the good formula, as opposed to just sticking to any one particular topic, but touch on each one. We had we didn't touch on TSCM, but what we did touch on was air tags, and that's a current threat, right? And there were some things on air tags I didn't know about before. I didn't know they had 3 antennas. I didn't know they were, I didn't know how the network worked, that the air tags will connect to every iPhone within proximity, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there's things like that are current and relevant, but I don't think there's any one particular avenue that we're going to stick to as far as maybe a theme, other than the theme being executive protection. It's one of the things, even to the finest detail. That's why we call it executive security operations and not just executive protection, because it's more of it's a bigger picture. It's the entire operations as far as a category. So
yeah, love that,
Jerry.
And I think Jerry will know that I appreciate that AirTag angle, for example, because of the annual CP Tech Forum that Jerry's been attending for a few years. I am a bit of a fan of all things tech, but do you think we're going to really see a growth in that kind of talks and topics?
I think as especially with AI, as it progresses, we're going to see much more focus on that. And, an iPhone is obsolete in 3 months, and with AI, it's obsolete in a month. And so the growth, the exponential growth is incredible. And we're probably going to, it's the next conference is going to be a year from now. And from now till then, to make a bet on what on what type of topics that we'll be talking about. It'd be challenging at this point, but you can certainly, we want to be on the cutting edge of everything in terms of the topics that we bring. And that's where we're not going to go back to the same old bag, and we're not going to have the same speakers, and we're not going to do the same topics unless, there's always that opportunity that a topic was so incredibly well received that they want to hear it again. But, the difference is we're asking for feedback. We want the feedback. This is like we said, it's not our conference. We want to know what you, the attendee, want to see and hear, and we'll go out and find, the expert in that area. So we really try to gear everything towards the attendees and not what we want, because it doesn't matter what we want. So after every speaker, we had a survey form, and we're going to be sending a survey form out now for the after action. And then we're going to take all of that feedback, and then we're going to devise next year's conference, which we've already come up with some ideas that we didn't implement in this year's conference. And so it's going to just be better already.
And what I saw you did it in Kansas City, and I know conference city locations in the round are a very big topic this year. Why Kansas City, and will you be there next year?
We had tremendous feedback on the site selection from the attendees. Not just that the hotel was great. You can go to any city and they're going to have great hotels. But we picked Kansas City because everybody has to travel a little bit, other than those that are traveling from other countries, right? The UK is still a long flight. However, it was appreciated that flying from the UK, they weren't flying to the West Coast, because obviously that adds additional flight time. So that's why we picked Kansas City. It's really middle of the U.S. I think most flights would be 2.5 hours if you don't have a connection. So from L.A. to Kansas City was 2.5 hours. Boston, how long did it take you to get there, Jerry?
It was like 2 hours and 20 minutes. Sometimes they tell you it was about 2 hours and 40 minutes or almost 3, but it's always around 2.5 to 2:20, and it was great. And as somebody who has to travel to Vegas a minimum of 3 times a year, probably 4, that's a flight that I just can't take anymore. I just don't like it. I'd rather fly. Quite frankly, when I head to London, it's about an hour longer to go to London than it is to go to Vegas. So we basically said we're going to pick someplace in the middle of the map, and that's why we chose that area. It's fair for everyone.
In Kansas City, when we went and did the advance, they have a new air terminal, and that was what everybody in Kansas City was talking about. We got to the hotel. Hey, did you guys check out the new air terminal? We're like, yes, we saw it. But it was very easy to from the airport to get to the hotel. It wasn't a complicated airport to traverse. Very straightforward, and 20-minute ride in an Uber from the airport directly to the hotel. And then the hotel was the layout of the hotel was also very convenient, very easy, which people also enjoyed.
And one of the other reasons is that we try to take everything. We unfortunately we micro analyze everything, and people may not understand why we've done the things that we've done. If they ask, we'll certainly tell them. But when you go to someplace like Vegas, or you go someplace that like a lot of folks are talking about, they wanted us to do it in Nashville. When you go to those types of places, there is a lot of distraction there. And that takes people out of the conference. And that's the difference between, I think, the audience that we had. They were there for one reason and one reason only, was to be part of that conference. It wasn't to party. It wasn't to go out and socialize. It was for that reason only. And that's why we're future sites will probably be based on that, convenience, but also how much distraction is there in and around that area. So we've taken everything. We try to take everything into account.
No, I like that, and thanks for that honesty, because people on the circuit will have maybe been talking about locations for events in the round, and that what you mentioned is very, very key. There were some people mentioning that some locations would not be permitted by organizations because of distractions. Other people said, well, I love those distractions. But then if you're going to a pure play conference, and of course I'm a fan of conferences, then there are other considerations. And yeah, this is a slightly different look at the Circuit Magazine podcast because we're looking thematically at a conference and at outputs. But I think this is really rather handy. I would love to see both of you in London in January. Obviously, I'm a fan of all things conference. But what else is coming up down the pipeline? What should we expect from the BEPP? Where can people get involved? I think that'd be a nice sort of next steps question.
So what we've got going on now is, of course, the ANSII standard is still underway, which if anybody is interested, they can go to our website, which is ep-board.org. Send an email saying want to be part of this. On the website, you can read about it, how you can be involved. But anybody's more than welcome to still apply. Just let us know, and we'll walk them through the process of that. We have the board certification that is still working behind the scenes. And again, just like ANSII, we're driving the bus, but other organizations like Prometric, they're the ones that's in charge of that board certification because they want to make sure that it's third party, it's non-biased, and they focus. This is what they do. So we have that. Like Jerry alluded to, we're highly considering a conference again next year. And then there's some other things that we're working on that, as if that's not enough, we're working on some other potential aspects that when they're a little bit more developed, I'll let you know, and we can do another podcast on those.
We only have 36 hours in a day. We can get a lot more done. I mean, these are full-time jobs for us, quite frankly. James and I are on the phone half a dozen, maybe a dozen times a day, whether it's communicating via phone or texting or emailing each other, and it's constant about things that we're trying to improve. I'm headed out to go pick up some items that we're going to be shipping out to the attendees. And we've worked a long time just on that. It's on their certificates, basically, their certificates of attendance. And that went through several iterations before we agreed, this is a certificate that I would be proud to put on my bookcase or wherever it is. And so something as simple as a certificate that said you attended the event, it took us days, hours upon hours, to try to figure out where this. We put the logo here. Do we put it there? Why is this significant? So on and so forth. So, and we think that the attendees will appreciate that. It's all about making sure that there's value for the attendees and there's value for the sponsors, and we go above and beyond because we appreciate like we say in my company, we appreciate our clients, our partners, because they put a lot of respect. They put a lot of confidence in us to provide a service for them, and we respect them for that. That's the same thing with the attendees and the sponsors. They have put an awful lot of confidence into us, and we want to show them that we appreciate that. We don't take it lightly. And the sponsors specifically, if it wasn't for the sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do the conference. And we want to make sure that they understand that we look at it as if it's our own money, and we're spending it wisely, and we're giving them the best bang for the buck. So same with the attendees.
If you look at from the start, they sign up, they register, and about 2 weeks out from the conference, they receive their credentials in the mail, like in a nice box with marketing material from our sponsors, nice lanyard, a coin. So we all go to conference and you have to stand in line to get your credential. And you get your credential and you move on, right? But this was something that people could actually look at, enjoy. Well, that box took us a long time to design. Took a long time to put them together. Took them a long time to fill them. So there's a lot of things going on in the background that, again, like Jerry said, we're trying to add value. We're trying to make them feel important. That wow, this is cool. This has never happened before, and we set that new bar to where that's how we want to do things, and that's how when Jerry's all about branding. When people think BEPP, we want them thinking that's next level. That is, they're top notch.
And is it something that one can join, be affiliated with? Is it a membership organization? What's on the cards?
Well, we've had the discussion. We don't want to be a membership. We want, as far as the ANSII standard, if people want to join up on that, that's fantastic. But there's pros and cons to having membership, and we've never done, and we've talked about this on the standard when we first developed. We've never been about the dollar as far as how do we make a return on this. Now, obviously, we have operating costs, and we need to have some sort of revenue. But that was never the initiative of this organization. Therefore, when we start talking membership, does that detract from our overall mission or how people view us? People start to look at us, oh, you're just another pay for organization, and we just don't want to kind of go in that realm.
And as folks that volunteer their time for this as a paid organization, there's an expectation that there's going to be some deliverables. And our bandwidth is only so wide, and right now, because it's all volunteer, no one's there. There's really no dynamic expectation. But with a paid membership type base, then they're going to expect something all the time, and we're not prepared to do that yet. And maybe 5 years from now, or who knows where this will go, that might change. But we don't want to do something and fail. We would rather wait and do it successfully, because we just don't want people to be disappointed in what we're trying to do, because that would discourage, that would first ruin our reputation, and second, it would discourage a lot of other people from supporting us. We don't want to do that.
Well, I think that's a good idea.
And on that, not that there's rumors or to spare anybody from thinking about it. Nobody was paid for this conference. Our speakers were not paid. They came, they flew their own, they paid their own way, they paid their own hotel. Every board member paid their own way, paid their own hotel room. Our special advisors, again, they paid their own way, and they paid for their own room. So everybody's in it for I like to think, for the right reasons, right? To improve the industry. And that's, I think, what's made us successful is we all get along, we all understand. We're not here for self-service. We're here for industry service.
When you have those folks that support you and appreciate you and respect you for that, they're willing to do it on their own. I mean, they're willing to say, I'm going to come I'm going to fly down here on my own, take care of my own hotel, because I support you, and it's important. And I sent a bunch of my staff down there, who originally were supposed to be there just in attendance. But as great team members, when we realized that we had a couple of areas where we needed some additional help, they just jumped right in, no problem, and we're able to handle some of the areas that would have been neglected, and then they were able to join, and enjoy the conference also. So, there's a lot. Everybody took part in this, invested a lot into it.
Yeah, I like that. I'm a fan of that. And you mentioned, being respectful to people's expectations. I think in the start of the pandemic, everybody started an association because they thought, why not? And then they realized, oh no, it's actually a massive work and massive expectations. Being associated with associations, I know, and it is indeed not something to spin up, on a whim. So I think that's a great approach. Well, I am looking forward to seeing you again at a number of different events, and I very much hope to see you next June, hopefully, if that's your next event. James, any sort of parting thoughts, parting pieces of advice?
No, I just, for those that are listening that attended, we really appreciate your trust in us, because again, inaugural, that's all they went trusting that we were going to put on something that we would deliver what we said we'd deliver. So, definitely appreciate that. For those that were on the fence that haven't had an opportunity or didn't have an opportunity to go to our conference, I hope to see you, at the next conferences, because we really try to deliver above and beyond expectations. So.
Love it. All right. So it's been lovely to have Gerard and James and, in spirit, the rest of the board on the podcast. A slightly different look. It's still thematic, but we're looking at the theme of security operations inside a conference. But I'm really, really appreciative for your time for joining us. So this has been a special edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast. Well, thank you very much, James and Jerry and the BEPP, for that sort of very insightful and timely look. Always good to reflect on earlier sessions of the Circuit Magazine podcast and see how everything is developing. What did you take away from today's session, John?
Well, like you just said, it's good to check back in and see the progress that's being made. And I think, that's the kind of watchword or watch phrase for everybody listening to this who considers themselves a stakeholder. Because whether you agree with it, whether you're happy with the direction it's going or not, you need to ask yourself what makes the most sense, what is the right thing for you to do at this moment in time. And if you want if you want a certain outcome, like I say, if you're a stakeholder, you need to be sat at the table. You need to be a part of the discussion. If you just walk away from this and your voice isn't heard, then, it's not represented and you get left behind. So I think it's very important to get industry-wide participation on a discussion like this. I mean, we've seen it ourselves here in the UK where, there's a lot of disgruntled voices now, but were they all sat at the table in the run-up to the launch of the SIA standards? And I know some of them were, and that adds fuel to the fire. But of course, not everybody's going to get it exactly, the outcome that they want, but it shouldn't stop you from trying to direct it in the direction in which, you believe this standard should be set at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, imagine you believe that no business will ever ask for this standard. Okay, maybe that could possibly transpire, but in the event that one did, or that some do, you're right. You got to have a seat at the table. You throw your hat into the ring, which I think maybe is a sort of happy medium to look at. And the event itself, it's going to be annual, so it appears. So maybe that's an annual opportunity to feed into the process, which I think is rather nice. Obviously, I have a soft spot for events, and I think that this format that they have put together is somewhere between training and a larger scale conference, which I think is great for the community. Obviously, it's lovely to welcome Jerry to London every January. He's a steadfast attendee of the CP Tech Forum each January in London, so looking forward to welcome him back again.
Yeah, and Pelham, just to say on that as well, often when people want change, they're seen as radicals, aren't they? And what you get is the people who are against change, i.e. they want the status quo, their voice isn't always as loud. A radical has something to shout about. They want change. They can always look to the existing model and say how that's failing, and then that kind of fuels the fire. But if you are happy with the situation as it is, it's not so easy to shout from the rooftops about it. And I mean, I'm cautious about making this kind of comparison, but I think we've seen something similar with Brexit here in the UK, where, the radical thing to, the radical idea was Brexit itself. And it got, a lot of, there was a lot of energy behind that argument. Whereas, the Remainers, I think, were a lot more conservative in their approach and their defense. And, I think, again, what we were just saying, a lot of people now are kicking themselves because they didn't have a louder voice at the time. And I would just say, that was something to be watchful for as, this discussion about standards ensues.
Well, I definitely want to have that conversation offline, because there's a lot of interesting points you raise and great synergies and sort of comparisons. But we are talking UK. Something about our UK community is on the cards, isn't it, John? You've recently updated our site.
Yeah, we've lots has been going on, and not least the BBA website. It's been a good servant for us. The last iteration, which was probably the third or fourth website, and it's finally gone off and hung up its spurs and has gone into retirement, and we've released a new website, which I think is, more modern. It is more reflective of the times and the way in which we as professionals go about our business, and also, more importantly, the way in which the association runs and aims to support its members. And I think so anybody who's interested, and go and take a look. We'd love to get your feedback. Easiest place to feedback is inside the BBA Connect app, which if you're not already signed up to, you can do so for free, and all the links are in the website.
Love it. And of course, lots of great things going on too with the NABA NABA Protector app as well.
I suppose I should also say what the address is. I take it for granted. And I mean, it's, if you type in British Bodyguard Association into any search engine, I'm sure, we're going to be right at the top. But, if you want to get there more expressly, then it is the-bba.org.uk.
Fantastic, and we can have that in our links as well. And in fact, we do each week. I think we have it in the links of the show notes.
We sure do.
So apart from that, we are of course looking for more contributors to the next issue of the magazine. That is always welcome. And some of you have submitted some great things, so thank you very much for that. A lot of great feedback from some of the previous Circuit Magazine podcast sessions, notably with Frank Cannon. I got a lot of great feedback on that one, so thank you very much. Frank was, almost a canonical representation of the entire podcast, because he is very kindly tuning in each time. So thank you very much for those comments. It really does make a big difference. So, John, I think this is a special edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast, in that we are combining the search for a standard with the very timely topic of a conference in Kansas City by the BEPP that searched or sought for that standard, which I think is a good blend of topics. It keeps everything nice and current and gives you access if you were not present at such a conference. So, from John and myself, this has been a special but great edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.